Wow. It, it is cold out there. I, I kind of wonder about the judgment of a person that would spend a night like this out playing with a telescope. Kind of calling it quits for the night. Back in the little warm room here, getting kind of warmed back up again. It reminds me of a time when I was still a teenager and Sue and I were dating. I used to like to hunt back then. I haven't done a lot of hunting for a long time, but I used to hunt back then, and my family, we had this duck blind that we would go to. We called it our house blind. Sometimes people don't communicate real well, and what one person uses with how they use a term isn't the way another person uses a term. Well, we told Sue all about this house blind. And we told her about this little garage we had in the back of the duck blind where we would pull the boat in. It was our boat garage. And we had a heater inside the duck blind to keep us from getting real cold. And we could fry bacon on it and make ourselves some breakfast in the morning. And so we told her all about it. Now, those of you that have been hunters, and especially duck hunters, when I use the word duck blind, house blind, heater, garage, boat garage, you're thinking different things than those of you that have never been hunting. I thought one thing, and well, we got Sue out there to the duck line once. That was it for her. What we called a house, she didn't call a house, and what we called heat, she didn't call heat. We had a failure to communicate. Which brings me to our devotional for this week. I want to talk a little bit about communication, and particularly a failure to communicate sometimes. And I'll share that with you. Hello, church family. So, here's my story about communication. A number of years ago, my wife Sue and I were able to go visit another church, a church that we had some contacts with in the past, and it was a special Sunday, the installation of a new pastor. So we got to be there for part of the joy, and the new pastor came in, was all excited about the church, and the people came in, and they were excited about the church, and then we watched as the service unfolded. The congregation had about 30 or 40 people in it. All of them, I think, were older than me. They were, probably retirement age, just about everybody. Probably no parents, just grandparents. The pastor, on the other hand, was very young, a lot younger than I was then, and that was quite a while ago, and I was younger then than I am now. So the pastor was pretty young, and the pastor had just come out of school and had a different style of worship than the people. I could tell that pretty plainly. The people, they knew hymns. The pastor liked choruses. So what the pastor had done was he found some friends of his and asked them if they would come for that Sunday to be there and to help lead worship. And he started kind of a new little band there at the church on that first Sunday. There were 2 or 3 people. They had some drums, a guitar, and I forget what else all they had in the band. What I remember is that as the service went on, I would look back and forth from the pastor to the people. And when I looked to the people, there were like 30 or 40 older people trying to be nice, but just sort of flat-faced and disengaged. Sort of like, but they were being kind. Then there was a young pastor with a couple of his younger friends up on a platform, up pretty high and a little removed from the people. And he was giving praise to the Lord and singing choruses that nobody else knew, and raising his hands in worship and closing his eyes and praising God. And I looked back at the people. I looked back at the pastor. And the whole service was going on like this. And a thought came to my mind. I don't know how it exactly came there, but probably influenced, of course, by what I was seeing. And I quickly jotted a note to myself, you know. And it became one of my proverbs for pastors or lessons learned in life. It became one that I jotted down to keep, to remember in the future. And what I jotted was this. And I probably was being more sarcastic than I need to be. I jotted down, note to self. If we were sending a young missionary to Mexico, it would be easier to teach them how to speak Spanish than to teach all of Mexico how to speak English. Sarcastic. I have a sarcastic streak. But the point being, over the years, I've been in some churches, appointed to churches that loved to sing choruses and praise and worship. I've been to churches that liked solid hymns and piano music or organ music to go with it. I've been in a country western church I was appointed to for a few years, and we had a four-string tenor banjo and a harmonica and a Martin guitar, and it was kind of like Mother Maybelle Carter type music. And from place to place to place, each time I went to a new church, they had their style of worship. And I thought to myself each time, I thought, it's going to be a lot easier for me to learn their style than to make all of them learn my style. Now, part of that comes from a belief that I have, and I could be wrong, but it comes from a belief that I have that one particular style isn't necessarily better than another particular style. That true worship is authentic worship, that is life-changing worship, and whether that's loud or whether that's quiet or whether that is, exuberant or whether that's rather reserved, true worship comes out of us and who we are. And so from church to church to church, I would try my best to learn the style of worship. And where I'm at right now, here at the Littleton United Methodist, I try to match our style of worship instead of trying to inflict, my views on everybody there. It reminds me of an old joke that says the most important part about seminary is that it gives a young pastor 4 more years to mature before being inflicted upon a new congregation. By the time we come out of college and the time we come out of seminary, almost all of us as pastors have a particular style that we like. But that may not be the style that matches our congregation. So I've been thinking about this for a couple of weeks. I was going to do this actually last week, and I didn't post it because I was trying to think, how does this relate to you today that's listening to me? All of you that are pastors, I see how that relates to you. But to most of the people that listen to my weekly devotions, how does it relate to you? And then I got the answer just moments ago. When I started this video, I was just closing up a meeting, a Zoom meeting, with other pastors in our district. We were with the DCOM of our district, our district superintendent was there, and we were sharing about what God is doing in our lives, and it was my turn to report also. But I had the opportunity to just sit back, because I jumped in pretty early to share, and sit back for the rest of the meeting and listen to how the different pastors in our area are handling COVID and technology. because we're living in a different world and people are communicating differently, and it may never go back to the way that it was. And so I'm beginning to realize that it's not just about hymns and choruses, but there's something about the way that people communicate today that's different than the way they used to communicate. And once again, it's probably more important for me to communicate the way people hear than for me to expect everybody else to communicate my style and my way. Sometimes we as churches do that. A few years ago, boy, this almost sounds sacrilegious now, but a few years ago, we started, several of us that were Christians, we started a motorcycle group. And the purpose of the motorcycle group was to be able to spend more time with those that weren't going to church. And so we made a rule for our group that you could ride with us. Anybody was invited to ride, and we'd have quite a few people riding, and some were, church-going people, and many weren't church-going people at all. And so we had a rule that we would talk to particularly church-going people with, and we would say, if you ride with us, at least on this day, kind of tone down the evangelical language a little bit, and don't make everybody stop in a restaurant and bow their heads in silent prayer, because that is way outside the way most of the people that are among us communicate. Let's just spend time together. Well, over the next few months, few years, we made some really good friendships. And we were able to share our faith, and we were able to pray, and when people had needs, they would come and they would ask us about our faith. They began to trust us with their faith. But we didn't chase anybody down and lasso them and try to make them, speak our language. Maybe true with your neighbors and friends also, that just being authentic and loving them and open with your faith, but without trying to press them into your language. I remember my mom, in the house that we grew up in, a lot of people that were friends of ours used to smoke a lot. Smoking's not so big now, but when I was a little kid, that was pretty big. And of course, in our house, we didn't smoke. It wasn't healthy, but my mom had a whole bunch of ashtrays. And whenever friends came over, she put the ashtrays out, and she wouldn't get all fussy about whether or not they smoked in the house. Everybody knew she didn't smoke, and everybody knew that in about every way possible, she wanted to live a life that she thought was pleasing to God and was not being tied down by any kinds of habits or anything like that. But they also all knew that she spoke their language and that she loved them. So today, in your world where you live, remember that it's easier to teach a missionary how to speak Spanish than it is to teach Mexico how to speak English. And go out and love the people around you. I hope you have a really good week.